Since this is the last speech that I will give as president, I think it is fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about the country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote me and said, "You can go and live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go and live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German or a Turk or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American." Yes, the torch of Lady Liberty symbolizes our freedom and represents our heritage, the compact with our parents, grandparents, and our ancestors. It is that lady who gives us our great and special place in the world. For it's the great life force of each generation of new Americans that guarantees that America's triumph shall continue unsurpassed into the next century and beyond. Other countries may seek to compete with us, but in one vital area, as a beacon of freedom and opportunity that draws the people of the world, no country on earth comes close. This, I believe, is one of the most important sources of America's greatness. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America we breathe life into dreams, we create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we close the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world will soon be lost. Those who become American citizens love this country evermore, and that's why the Statue of Liberty lifts her lamp to welcome them to the golden door. It is bold men and women yearning for freedom and opportunity who leave their homelands and come to a new country to start their lives over. They believe in the American dream, and over, they make it come true for themselves, for their children, and for others. They give more than they receive, and often they are entrepreneurs. But their greatest contribution is more than economic, because they understand in a special way how glorious it is to be an American. They renew our pride and gratitude in the United States of America, the greatest, freest nation in the world, the last, best hope of man on earth. That was the final speech given by Ronald Reagan before he left office. That is what the great communicator, who obviously had very good speechwriters, had to say about immigrants. And the lesson is this. I don't know how Reagan felt about immigrants. I don't know if it even mattered to him. I think they will say whatever they need to maintain power. If they need cheap labor and to break unions, they may use immigrants. If they need someone to blame issues on and feel that we have too much labor, they might deport them. Either way, immigrants always exist as a marginalized group of the working class. Their rights, their freedoms, like all working people, depend on how useful they are to the owning class. I still find this speech inspiring. I am not a patriot. I'm definitely not a nationalist. But I think it is something that we should aspire to. I realize that Native American people have a different view on this, and I do not fault them for that. I do support land back. Historically, I believe it hasn't been migrants and refugees that Native Americans have had to fear. It has been the colonizers, like Reagan, that give speeches like this. And Trump will steal the legacies of presidents past. And though he may be unique, most of them were much like him, especially Jackson, and especially Reagan. They will reuse the same propaganda techniques to instill white supremacy and patriarchy, and most importantly, class hierarchy, to keep workers oppressed, to keep themselves in power. If you have a holiday tradition where you say a prayer or make a statement, I would encourage you to ask if you can read Reagan's final speech as president. I think it might be very eye-opening to some of your relatives if they have a particular opinion on immigration, if they do support MAGA, especially if they're Christian. Because if you were to tell an alien coming to Earth that America was a Christian nation, that alien would likely believe that this nation must be the best nation on earth to live in. All poor people would be taken care of. There would be no wealthy people either, because, like the Bible says, one cannot serve God and money, and nothing is harder than a wealthy man getting into heaven. If we were a Christian nation, we would welcome refugees to our detriment. Not just when it's convenient, but we would give the shirts off our back to help refugees. But the fact is, we don't have to do that. We don't have to sacrifice to help refugees or immigrants. I live in the place that Trump is talking about in his Thanksgiving statement about Minnesota and Somalis. And I have to say, they have been some of the best neighbors that I have ever had. I've been living in this place where I'm at now for 5 years. But before I was here, I was in Riverside Plaza, which is Grand Central Station for Somali immigrants. And they honestly were some of the best neighbors I ever had. They were caring and considerate. I have no idea what he's talking about when he talks about roving gangs and violence and antisocial criminals that are destroying our nation. It is true that immigrants are the people building our nation, and we are a nation of immigrants. And this is something we should stand up for. This should not be a partisan issue. But it's disheartening to see Christians especially, whose Bible says, foreigners living among you should be treated as the native born. For you were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord. And to love thy neighbor as thyself. And that there should not be a separate law for foreigners. The Bible says this so many times, many more times than it says anything about homosexuality, I promise you. If people think being a white American is all about hating immigrants, and if people think being a Christian is about rejecting refugees and the poor and worshiping the wealthy and powerful and blindly believing whatever the government says, people who turn in their neighbors because it is the law, would they turn Jesus over to Herod to be killed? Would they have cheered Pontius Pilate and said that he did the right thing by condemning Jesus to death because that was the law? It seems to me that of all religions, Christianity is one that says you should question government authority, all authority. And indeed, that is why evangelical Christians for so long did not get involved in government. They saw it as a worldly thing where they were concerned with only heaven and God. But now we have prosperity gospel twisted into something just to keep the wealthy and powerful in place. And I've never been a huge fan of religion, so I'm not here to defend Christianity, but I think Jesus' teachings speak for himself. He believed in a very aspirational form of love, where you love others just as much as yourself. And that is definitely not what MAGA is practicing, and that is not what the people who follow Trump are practicing. But if I could ask Trump one question, I would ask him, does he serve God? Does he serve money? Or does he think Jesus was wrong when he said that you can't serve both?